The heavy price of sense perception. It is right here that all observers, from Newton to Einstein, have been so grievously misled by the evidence of their senses. All of them have believed in a force in nature which pulls inward from within. Out of their observations we have, in physics, a law covering the acceleration of gravity, and mathematics to give ratios to the power of matter to attract matter, and many other misconceptions. The very fact that a stone falls to the ground has built a belief that gravity attracts it. Instead of that, it is the density of electric potential which causes the stone to seek its like pressure condition in motion. The stone is densely wound up into a high potential, high melting point state. It belongs in an electric pressure which has caused that state of density, and it will seek it, not because it is attracted to it, but because the vortices of compressing motion are pulling it that way. Every potential state of pressure in this universe has its proper place in it, and it will seek the current of motion which takes it there. Raindrops will fall to seek equality of environment in the direction of gravity. Compression is the cause of that fall, not gravity. Water vapor will rise to seek equality of environment in the direction of space. When water vapor finds its equal pressure, it will float weightlessly, for weight is but the measure of potential which is out of place. Matter which floats in equipotential environments is weightless in respect to any other matter in the universe. Yet, mathematicians spend much wasted time in calculating the weight of this weightless planet. Gravity exerts no force whatsoever to either attract or repel. Gravity is a shaft of magnetic stillness, which has been extended 2 ways from zero in the cathode of the electric current, around which electric motion can simulate the power or energy of its magnetic zero center. Gravity is motionless and changeless. A gravity shaft is a 2-way extension of a point in space where all the power in all the universe is existent, to a pair of points around which motion turns to balance the power extended from their centers. Electricity spins around these pairs of gravity points as they extend into shafts to simulate that energy by motion. But the simulation is not the reality. When each pair of gravity points meet as one, gravity unifies and dual polarity ceases. The magnetic stillness of the cathode, where division began, is then repeated in matter. The thoughts which the above is written to insinuate are, 1. That every effect in nature which observers have attributed to gravity and magnetism should rightly be attributed to electric potential, and 2. That the center of any mass like the sun is a center of maximum heat and pressure, which is a violently explosive condition, not an attractive one, for heat expands and violently desires to escape. Tens of thousands of suns have exploded. They are called novas. Many of them are conquered by the cold of space and re-imprisoned. The greatest of these is known as the Crab Nebula. It is a very recent explosion, but a very spectacular one. A careful study of its movements gives one a clear comprehension of that majestic battle which is continually going on between the cold of space and the heat of its resistance to its electric division. These misleading effects of nature have held scientific progress back for too long already. Their correction would be of incalculable value to present-day progress. The textbooks tell you that there are 2 kinds of electricity, a positive kind and a negative opposite. Let us show you how impossible and illogical this is, and how contrary it is to nature's processes in the construction of matter. We again repeat the fact that electricity does only one thing. It divides an equilibrium into equal pairs and compresses them until they unite to create an explosive condition around a still point of gravity. When that purpose has been completed, electricity slowly dies in all masses until all motion has ceased in them. It does not require two forces to compress anything. If you wish to compress air into your tire, you compress it with a force exerted in one direction, which is inward from the outside. The greater the force you exert in that direction, the greater the multiplication of resistant pressure within your tire, as compared with the pressure outside of it. If you open a valve, and the pressure within your tire will explode outward without the aid of another kind of electricity to help it escape from its bondage. It will seek its equilibrium level without another kind of force to help it. The universal vacuum is that universal equilibrium level. Any departure from that state in nature's normalcy is a forced departure, which causes a tension or strain. The zero universe is without tension or strain. All matter is compressed motion. All compressed motion is explosive. It is in exactly the same condition as your tire, which you have compressed into a strained, tense condition, from which it constantly exerts its own strength of desire to escape into the universal equilibrium. This desire for outward explosion is inherent in all matter. There is no desire in matter to hold itself together with other matter. We refer you back to figures 6 and 7 for further study. Note that the 0, 1 is free from tensions, and the other one is full of tensions from which they can be freed only by generating enough heat to begin their slow process of radiation or decay. It will help you to better comprehend our meaning if you stretch a piece of elastic from its normal equilibrium condition of rest. It takes force for you to stretch it, but it will return to its normal condition without need of another kind of force. In stretching the elastic, you have created strains and tensions of an abnormal condition. The zero universe is balanced. Everything in nature which becomes unbalanced by the exertion of any force will eventually find balance in the cosmic vacuum, which is the one normal condition of space. It is also the cause of all effect and the source of all energy. If you fully comprehend this, you may now solve that great mystery which great thinkers in science thought to be insoluble, the mystery as to how matter emerges from space and how space swallows it up again. How was it that early investigators decided that there were two opposite kinds of electricity instead of the one kind which produces motion? It was because the two opposite conditions of living and dying, growing and decaying, heating and cooling, polarizing and depolarizing, and all other effects of motion, are expressed in seemingly opposite directions by seemingly opposite forces. There are no opposite directions or opposite forces, however. There are but divided sexes which exert the same force and in the same direction. The one force is compression and the one direction is spiral. That which seems to be two are one when they are united. They could not unite if they were pursuing opposite directions, nor could they be one if they were opposites. One's senses are very deceptive. They convincingly make one believe the very opposite of what they manifest. Early investigators did not take into account the fact that motion is a cosmic abnormality which has been caused by a disturbance of stillness. The normal condition of this universe is a rest condition. Motion is a created effect which emerges from rest and returns to it. This universe of motion might be likened into a quiet pool into which a stone has been thrown. The normal quiet of the pool has been disturbed by a force. The normal quiet will return without the aid of force. There is no opposite force which causes the return to normal balance. And so it is with life and death. They are seemingly opposite effects which emerge from the Creator's zero universe as a disturbance of its vacuum by seemingly opposite pressures. So also are heat and sound. But all of these which emerge by the application of force return to their normal rest condition without the aid of another kind of electric force or a change in their one universal spiral direction. Let us be sure that you understand this vital fundamental of nature that has so grossly deceived the greatest minds of the centuries. We return to the tire which you compressed into very much higher pressure than that of its environment. That pressure is held in the tire by a sealed casing, but it is very difficult to entirely seal it against slow leaking from some parts of it. Always remember that every action you perform causes motion, and motion is electric, and electricity moves spirally, and that spirals are always created in pairs. You cannot cut a section through any electric current anywhere without producing rings which spin around holes. Try it. Pass an electric current through an evacuated tube with sufficient air or vapor in it to aid visibility, and you will see the rings which electricity creates. You will see them as rings of light spinning around black holes. Those rings you see are divisions and extensions of the ultimate particles of creation, for there is no other form in nature than opening and closing rings. They are the basis and the substance of all form. When they appear, matter appears, and when they disappear, matter disappears, and all effects of matter with them, such as sound and color and heat and form, density and dimension. Once again, we repeat that this universe of motion is entirely electric, and there is no power or quality in electricity to pull inward from within. Again, we say electricity does but one thing. It compresses to divide into pairs for the purpose of creating a dense pressure condition known as electric potential. This is done against the resistance of the universal vacuum, which finally conquers every effort of electricity to simulate cohesion. The entire principle of the construction of matter is based upon surrounding an area of rest in the omnipresent vacuum with 4 rings. Then in compressing the rings in divided and extended pairs until the holes are eliminated, and flaming carbon suns occupy the holes. Suns then throw off rings in series of 4 until the holes return. Electricity causes the compression, and the zero vacuum is the expression of mind energy, which causes the expansion. This universe is a compression-expansion pump. One end of its piston is in the eternal vacuum, and the other end is in the pressures of electric potential. Remember also that every electric action which is recorded in nature, like the growth of a tree or throwing a stone in water, produces rings with holes in them. The young tree starts that way as a tube, but closes its holes by compression to become a solid. And every solid is a series of ring layers which eventually open to let space in gradually, until space becomes all and the tree disappears entirely into it. Cut your own body into sections and cut your own body into sections, and you will find it is composed of rings around holes. Your chest, your skull, your bones, arteries, heart, windpipe, nerves, and every cell of your body. Electricity works that way. It tries to close up its holes, but very few out of millions of effects succeed in doing so. Organic life has not one example of bodybuilding which has succeeded in becoming a solid, not even the ivory of an elephant's tusk. It is centered by a hole, and its cells are porous. All nature everywhere cries out in protest to such an unnatural and impossible condition as the nuclear atom. Nature is cellular, and cells are rings in sections. Also, every cell in nature is a product of the union of 4 pairs of rings. Nature also cries out its protest against such a concept as that of cosmic glue of some mysterious nature, which supposedly holds the atom together from within a nucleus. Atoms are held together only by pressures from the outside and sealed from the outside by cold. The inside of every atomic mass is a heat generator and heat consumer. Atomic units have cold centers, but combined atomic masses have relatively hot centers, according to their purpose and position. Its cells must be electrically conditioned to maintain that heat, but no matter what the temperature is in any cell, it tends to expand it, not hold it together. Instead of being a glue, it is an explosive. And here's another chart. Rest is a source of energy. I guess this is showing the tube. The lower diagram represents the beginning of matter in the inert gases. The upper diagram represents the end of matter in flaming carbon suns. Okay. It will be well to examine the reasoning process which led observers and research workers to determine that there must be 2 kinds of electricity. The idea of a universal vacuum never entered into the thinking or reasoning of early observers of effects of motion. Lacking that concept, they lacked their first essential premise, the basic fact that creation is a product of mind. Secondarily, they conceived heat to be the reality which caused motion, and considered cold to be just less heat, instead of cold being the eternal uncreated cause from which heat was created as an effect. Instead of heat being the cause of motion, the reverse is the fact. Heat is the result of motion. Both are abnormal conditions in this universe of rest. Now it so happens that the early concept of electricity provided for a one-way direction which compressed to multiply potential, which simultaneously multiplied heat. The opposite flow was theoretical but necessary, for there are 2 poles and 2 opposite conditions to every electrical effect. There is but one direction to motion, however. This is a 2-way opening and closing universe, both of which are expressed in unchanging one-way direction. The sex-divided condition did not occur to those early observers. Such an ideal never entered their thinking. To them, sex was a function of organic life, and most distinctly not a part of the atomic life of inorganic matter. Nor did the spectrum red and blue divisions ever become a part of their consideration. Nor did the idea of tensions ever enter into their thinking in relation to electricity. The tension of the spectrum division. the tension of the spectrum division, which desired unity by the disappearance of the colors of motion into the magnetic white light of universal stillness, or the tensions of sex division of father-motherhood into father and mother bodies, which desired unity in sexlessness. Nor did they take into consideration that the two opposites of compression and expansion coincided with concentration and decentration, growth and decay, life and death, or the polarization and depolarization principle. Then, in the turn of the century, Rutherford and Bohr conceived the ideal of atomic construction as being based upon the firm belief in the Coulomb law, which says that matter attracts oppositely charged electrical matter and repels similarly charged matter. Nothing could seem more convincing, for one pole of a magnet seemingly attracted its opposite and repelled its like. It never occurred to them that males and females do not unite with their own sexes. If the sex ideal in relation to electricity had occurred to them, there would never have been a Coulomb law, nor a nucleus in an atom. Nothing could be more convincing to sense reasoning than the very self-evident fact that there must be two kinds of electricity, even if the electric current did run but one way, but with an unproved suspicion that it ran two ways. Much confusion has been caused by the fact that the two poles extended in opposite directions from their dividing cathoid and approached each other from opposite directions to form an anoid. This led to the belief in the opposite directions of the two kinds of electricity, one of which was assumed to attract and the other to repel. The answer to this is that polarity is not motion. It is the stillness of gravity which centers motion. It is the omnipresent zero. It therefore has no direction. Motion is confined only to the electric rings, which are forever encircling gravity. Those rings have but one direction in their turnings around their omnipresent gravity controls. But they cause two separate effects. One of these effects is centripetal and the other is centrifugal. Because of these two life-death effects, the universe may be described as a two-way opening and closing universe of but one direction. Some new and important discoveries were made which proved that there were two kinds of electricity. We will recite one of these discoveries which clinched the belief in two kinds of electricity, one kind for each way. You can read it for yourself more fully if you choose in the Encyclopedia Britannica under the heading of Electronic Tube. It reads as follows. T. Edison observed the passage of electric current in one direction from a hot filament to a cold metallic plate in an evacuated enclosure, as if negative particles were emitted from the filament. Let us see how this fact was misinterpreted. There was nothing in this experiment which warranted the attention it received. The electric current which Edison observed was the radiation from a heated condition seeking an equilibrium. It did not need to be in an evacuated tube. It is the same effect which your hand feels from the rays of the sun or your body feels from a hot stove in a room. It has always been known as radiant energy. Radiation creates electric current, so does generation. One compresses, the other expands, but it is the same electric current. Any movement of any kind creates a two-way electric current, which traverses the whole universe, even the movement of your little finger. A hot iron at one end of a room and a block of ice at the other end will cause an electric current to flow both ways until the iron, the ice, and the room are all equal in temperature. That will also happen if you put two hot irons at opposite ends of a room. Warm water rising into cold space creates an electric current. But that does not mean that there is one kind of electricity to make it rise and another to make it fall. One might as reasonably say that there are two kinds of water, the kind which rises and the kind which falls. Such a claim is like saying that there is one kind of electricity which makes a man live and another kind to make him die. Electricity is centrifugal when it multiplies its potential by increasing its speed, and it is centrifugal when it decreases its potential also by multiplying its speed. Electricity is motion, any kind or stage of motion. There cannot be two kinds of electricity. There is but one kind of electricity, but that one kind multiplies its power to compress in the first half of its cycle and divides that power in the second half. Much confusion is caused by mistaking speed for high potential and vice versa. For this reason, it is well to exemplify our meaning by the following example. To create matter by the compression of 4 pairs of rings projected from cathoids, the speed of the current around its shaft of gravity multiplies constantly and volume decreases as speed increases until the collision takes place. Simultaneously, the speed of rotation of units in the current slows down until the completed mass after the collision is its minimum. From that point on, every effect is in reverse. Revolution around the shaft of gravity of each separate unit of the mass, including projections from it like planets and satellites, become increasingly slower when rotation of each mass upon its own shaft is increasingly faster. In this case, speed results in a lowering of potential and a vast increase in volume. And I will end here and begin in the next one again.